Wonderful. Thank you, Hillary. I appreciate the introduction. Again, I am Marla King with FAFSA. FAFSA stands for the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. We are the state agency that administers the Pennsylvania State Grant. What we're going to do today is we are going to talk about the FAFSA, that free application for federal student aid. And I will let you know that we're really going to cover the highlights, the changes that have occurred in the world of financial aid. And there are two big ones that have happened out there. If you do want more information about financial aid, maybe for yourself and your kiddos as they're coming up in the future going to school, you can feel free to go out and watch a full financial aid night presentation, as I call it, by visiting YouTube. Simply type in FEA, P-H-E-A-A, student aid, and you'll get to hear me and see my face all over again out on YouTube for that presentation. With that being said, on the next slide, I would like to start off my segment with talking to you about the biggest changes that have occurred in the world of financial aid. So on this slide, next slide, Hillary, you should be able to see, there we go, awesome. You all should be able to see the two major changes that have occurred. And if you've done financial aid before, worked whether with high school seniors or whether you yourself have filled out the FAFSA or filled it out with your own child, you'll note that in the past, the FAFSA filing opening for seniors and for students in higher education used to be January 1st. Well, the biggest change has occurred this year for the 17-18 academic year coming up, in being that all of our seniors and all of our students that are in post-secondary ed now are able to fill out that FAFSA October 1st. There's lots of reasons as to why the government felt this to be necessary. One, they wanted to allow this window of opportunity to be greater, giving students and parents and families more time to gather their information and get this FAFSA submitted. Really, the ultimate goal here is to make sure that students have enough time to have those financial aid packages in hand from all of the schools. That way they're able to make a well-informed choice or decision based upon those financial aid packages. And if you can remember back when we were in school, we weren't seeing financial aid packages until, my goodness, I want to say April, March, May, I mean, really far out there. So the hopes and the goals with moving this back to October 1st is to get students to fill out this FAFSA as soon as possible so they don't forget. And then also to be sure that they are really taking a look, as I said, at those financial aid packages and making the best decisions for the student and for their family. With that being said, the second biggest change occurs in terms of what tax information or income information the families and students are going to use when filling out this FAFSA. So in years past, they would use just the year before information when submitting their FAFSA. That has changed. Now, what parents and students will be using is what is called prior tax year information. So prior year information. So essentially that means your seniors that are in high school and are going to be filling out that 2017-18 FAFSA are going to be using their 2015 tax information. And that's good for a multitude of reasons. You know, many parents and students were filling out the FAFSA estimating information. So they would have to go back in and make corrections anyway, which would in turn cause more work for the financial aid offices because then they would have to repackage the estimated into the actual financial aid packages. So by using prior year information, that tax information is already done. The IRS has already done their magic. It's already submitted. This makes it even easier for students and parents because in the financial section, parents and students have the tool that is called an IRS data retrieval tool. So this is how it works. In the parent and in the student financial section, there'll be a drop-down box. It'll ask, you know, what kind of form did you file? You'll answer a series of questions, and then that IRS data retrieval tool, I call it a button, will appear. Very simply, by clicking on that button and entering in some information, it's going to transfer the family, the student, out to the IRS website, which is wonderful because honestly, the hardest part of this form is when you were putting in your tax information from everything that was on, whether it's your 1040, your 1040A, or your 1040EZ. By using this IRS data retrieval tool, or button as I call it, it automatically fills in the hardest part of a form. So questions like your adjusted gross income or taxes paid, that tends to confuse us. That is going to automatically transfer it right into the form, just making it so much easier all the way around. What else makes this good is that this helps the financial aid office. So lots of changes are occurring, but they're going to stay this way if they're students that are in college already. Whether they're currently freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, they're going to adhere to these changes as well. And I will remind you that the FAFSA is completed by going out to www.fafsa.gov. Now, on the next slide, you're going to see, I gave you some years. So if the students are filing certain years, you're going to be able to see which tax form they're going to use so that you can better understand what prior year means. So looking at the left-hand side of our screen, if you plan to attend college from July 1 of 2017 until June 30th of 2018, like I said, we're using the 2015 tax information. Moving along, if they're planning for July 1 to 2018 to June 30th, 2019, they're using 2016. So you can see how that works, prior year. Now on this next slide, I believe is the hardest part for parents and students to understand when filling out their FAFSA is that they will need to electronically sign their FAFSA. And they need to do that by creating what is called an FSA ID, Federal Student Aid ID. Well, here's a couple reasons why it's a little confusing for parents and students. It's not really an ID. An ID we think of as a number. It essentially is a username and password. So we have username and passwords for certain accounts that we may have online, whether it's checking or even Facebook. The student needs to create their very own FSA ID, username and password, and the parent, one parent, needs to create their very own username and password FSA ID. Gets a little tricky here because the student and parent have to have separate email addresses. So the FSA IDs can't be the same. They can't use the same email address either. And they really should make sure that they get this username, password, FSA ID before completing the FAFSA because it really is going to make it easier. And just like you wouldn't share your username and password to your checking or savings account with me or anyone else, you want to make sure that the students' parents are not sharing their username and password, this ID, with anyone else either because it is tied to personal information and we want to make sure that nothing were to happen. So we would say that if they are going to write it down, which they should, write it in a safe and a secure location that they're going to remember. Remember is the key because they're going to use it multiple times during their child's education and the student's education. They're going to use it to renew their FAFSA the following year and the year after and the year after that. But they're going to use it if they need to get in and make a FAFSA correction or to check their FAFSA status. If they decide to take a loan from the federal government, the student needs it to sign their master promissory note. The parent needs it to sign their master promissory note out on studentloans.gov. They're going to use it even in the future. So we're talking years down the road when they want to take a look and see what kind of loans have they used. What kind of loans do they still have? What kind of loan options are out there? They're going to use this FSA ID. So again, really an important tool that should be done before filling out the FAFSA. So working with students and parents, please reiterate the importance of this FSA ID and receiving it as soon as possible. So those are the biggest changes in the world of the FAFSA and the world of financial aid, really keeping us on our toes, but for the better. And I do believe that this is for the better for our students. We've seen more FAFSAs being filled out earlier, so that's wonderful. And that doesn't mean that they still can't fill it out January, February. As long as the students do not miss the school's financial aid deadline, then they're fine. Now that we've covered that, I'd like to take an opportunity to talk to you on the next slide and the following slides about some websites that we at FAFSA provide for you, whether you're in elementary, middle, or high school, or beyond, at no cost. We have two really great, we have more than that, I'll backpedal, but we have two ones that I'm going to speak about this evening that'll help you talk to your students not only about financial aid, but also about the beginning. Let's back up a couple steps and talk about their careers. So on the next slide, educationplanner.org. If you're not familiar with educationplanner.org, it is a website that is available for you to use with your students in the classroom. It's a website that you're able to share with parents. It has three different components: a student section, a parent section, and also a counselor section. Moving right along to our next slide, we can break them down even further and show you that within the student section, they are subdivisions. So there's a career planning area, a preparing for school section, of course a paying for school, self-assessment, and also ask a counselor. The parent section has some additional information that relates to parents. And in the counselor section, you will note that there is a little tool that's available if you're interested in finding some ideas on how to use this in the classroom. And I'll give you some of my ideas on how I use it in the classroom when I get to go out and visit school. Next slide. Here, we're just going to break down a couple of the sections for you. So you'll see on the left-hand side, if we were to click on students, I have that circled red for you. When we click on students, you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, it drops down into even more subcategories. So under career planning, you're going to see find careers. Under that find careers, you're going to see this is where your students are able to explore the things that they like to do. They're able to research careers. And I really love doing this in the classroom with students because I hear so often they don't know what they want to do. You know, I tease all the time and said, I think I should have been Belle in Disney World. That would have been fun. But our students don't know. And this is a great way to look at careers in different kinds of ways, in different sort of, not necessarily tests, but tools. So the first is a career cluster activity. So basically, they would enter in a series of answers about themselves, and it's 4 pages. It swipes across like a phone. Some of the questions on those 4 pages, and it's one big question with a series of items that would match up to them. So for example, I like to, ... work with my hands, communicate with others, lead others, teach others, be alone. Those are the kinds of questions that we're asking our students. We're not really making it too complex because this tool in this section, this Find Careers, I find that you can work with, 6th, 7th, you can go down that far as into 6th and 7th graders. Obviously, this is a great tool for at the high school level, but you can start introducing some of these careers to them in this way. And again, they also do match up with the career and education standards, so do be aware of that. The next one was which careers match your skills. So they just go in and they take a look at some of the skills they have, and they'll match some of the careers up. Both of these, actually all of them, all link out to ONET, which is wonderful because the local career links are using ONET when their job seekers are going in, and I know a lot of post-secondary schools are using ONET as well. So we've decided that linking out to ONET is a great way to talk to them about careers. There's just a general career search. So Johnny says he wants to be an engineer. He can type in engineer. There's also career videos. That really seems to spark a lot of interest in our students. So if you have a computer lab activity, it's great. We think we might know what an engineer does, or we think we might know what someone else does, but being able to see the video, to be able for especially our visual learners, being able to look at it and see what does that kind of job actually entail is fantastic, especially in the world of technology nowadays. Our kids have grown up with technology where many of us have not. So being able to tie this into the classroom to work with them with careers is wonderful and an opportunity for you to use. We also have a section about hot jobs for the future. So hey, how about those green jobs, those emerging jobs that are out there? Of course, something about, it's not all about the money. And then we talk about schools for your career. On the next slide, we just want to show you, which careers match your skills. So for me, I tend to use that career cluster activity quite a bit in the classroom, that first bullet that I showed you. I tend to go in and work with the 7th graders with this, and then I'll get invited again in 8th grade to see if their interests have changed. Some schools will do it in 7th grade, and then we'll revisit in 10th grade to see if their interests have changed. And I'm sure you know they definitely change based upon the experiences in which we're put in front of us. So we wanted to show you here in that second one which careers match your skills. It's just a very simple, I'm good at, and here are some of those things, and then it will show the students their results. It'll break it down into those clusters like I had said. They'll click on the link, and then it takes them out to a multitude of jobs that match up with those clusters. What's great about it, that they'll then be able to click on those jobs. And if you are working with them in a computer lab and you have this opportunity, I would encourage, and what I like to do is have them not click on the traditional jobs. Think of jobs outside the box. I always ask a student, okay, well, you know what a doctor does. You know what a lawyer does, probably. They all know what CSI people do from all those shows on TV. How about you click on one of these jobs that you have no idea what it is and just read it, because it'll break it down for them and let them know what the job is in bullet points, which is good. And then it will also break it down and let them know whether they need a certain amount of experience or post-secondary education training. And then what makes it even more fun is as they scroll down, they are able to see the salary, and that's when they start talking. So if you decide that you're going to do this in the classroom with your students, you will get chatter during this activity. And it's not bad chatter. I almost encourage it, because you do hear them start to talk and say, how long do you need to go to school? How much are you going to make? So a really fun activity that's available for them. Here on the next slide, you will see that on the left-hand side, continuing down, that there is an opportunity for students to go out and look for, say they figured out their career, maybe we're looking at a student in 10th grade, 11th grade, they know what they want to do, but they're not sure what school to go to. Out here is where the student can take a look at those schools or that offer that major or that career. So just another opportunity, a way for them to utilize Education Planner, keeping them all in one website. And then when they do need to go out to websites, we send them out to websites that are trusted and that are secure, always with Education Planner in the background that they can come back to as their home area. Additionally, on the left-hand side, you'll see the other areas of Education Planner. They're broken down and they go into subcategories just as that career planning section. So if you take a look, and you'll see the second arrow on the left-hand side says preparing for school. There's a paying for school. There's a self-assessment. And there's also an ask the counselor area. Finishing up here in Education Planner, on the next page, I will just mention to you the self-assessment area is an area in which you can utilize with definitely 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. First, what kind of a student are you? It's going to ask them questions about themselves. And there are no right or wrong answers. That's what's great about utilizing these kind of assessments, because the scores only matter to them, not to anybody else. We try to make this all about them, to understand themselves. What's your learning style? This is a lot of fun. I use this a lot in 7th grade when they're making that change. A lot of my schools around here, 6th grade ends elementary school, so they start in 7th. This learning style is good for the students because it's a simplified learning style quiz. So we're really focusing on, those auditory and visual and tactile learners. You can have a lot of fun with them in the classroom. You go on beforehand and you read what kind of learner is what, and you start seeing that kid that's fidgeting and tapping and dancing, and you can say, I bet you're a tactile learner. and they're going to think you're psychic, and it's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to automatically grab that student's attention, which normally may not be paying attention. I like the learning style a lot because it helps students, once they realize what their learning style is, we also provide them with some tips as of where to sit in class. If you're a tactile student, you shouldn't sit in the front because you're going to aggravate the teacher. You should go in the back. So also, we'll give them some tips as to study skills, and that's something that many of our students are lacking. They just don't realize the importance of studying, and more so, they don't know where to start. So we try to give them some help in that area. We also will have an assessment on what study habits can you improve upon and how strong is your character. What's great about these is that they don't take that long. So it's not like something you need to spend an incredible amount of time on. There are those little things that you can go in and out, get results, and have a conversation. An education planner is there and is available absolutely for you to use. The next slide, I will talk to you about MySmartBorrowing. MySmartBorrowing is kind of the next step after Education Planner. So MySmartBorrowing.org, it's an interactive online tool that we at FAFSA have developed to help families and students. You can use MySmartBorrowing on your laptop, on your desktop, on a phone, on a tablet. It's a tool that's going to help students estimate their salaries, how much they're going to pay in tuition, the impact of savings. It's going to calculate loan repayments. And ultimately, the goal is to help them make smart choices, to help them not over-borrow. And when I mean over-borrow, I don't mean that they take out more money than they need. Well, I do mean that, but over-borrow for the school in which they're going, for the career in which they're going to get. On the next slide, let me tell you how it works. So MySmartBorrowing will guide students through a couple sections, and they're pretty easy to move through. You'll see we start off with the first step where they select a career. So they have to put in what they want to do, where they want to go to school, and where they think they want to live. They then I forgot the most important one, how much they think they're going to make. And remember how much we thought we were going to make. So it's always fun doing this in the classroom with your students. The second one, they select a school. So they pick the school, then they put in how much they think they're going to borrow over all 4 years for their education. The third step is they're going to factor in savings, another great conversation piece, because many students haven't spoke to their parents, their families about how are we paying for school. Do you have anything set up? Do you have a checking account, a savings account, a college savings plan? They don't know. So I find that doing this activity with students, they go home and they start questioning, well, how are we going to do this? And then finally, number 4, we get the results. Let's move to the next slide. On those results, your students are going to be able to see their potential salary in their jobs. They're going to be able to add and compare schools, which is wonderful. So as they start off, you start off and you can only take a look at the first school you put in. You then can copy the data and just change the school, so keeping everything else the same. With that being done, picking up the 4 schools, kids and students, parents, families, they're able to compare apples to apples. You're able to see the difference at the institutions right in front of you for the same degree, almost like, you're buying an education. It also will let them know if they're borrowing too much because there's a budget section. And in that budget section, it's some of them are pre-populated. So it'll bring over their student loan debt. So it'll bring in their monthly salary. It'll subtract their student loan debt and then subtracts those things called taxes that we all love so much on a monthly basis. But then it'll also have some other budget area things such as meals, clothing, housing, entertainment, transportation. If you're doing this in a classroom setting, you'll see at the very bottom, if the student is doing good and they have money left over at the end of the month, they get a sum and it's all in green. So good job. If they're not doing so good, it's red and they got the thumbs down. I would suggest not saying anything to them because some of the boxes, such as the meals and clothes and housing and Wi-Fi, they're all, you can manipulate them. So you can say to the student who's in the negative, well, what could you do to this budget to get you in the green, the thumbs up, and see what they do. They are going to put everything in zeros. They're going to have no cell phone, no transportation. They're going to be living at home forever. That is what you're going to see them do. And very simply, as the educator, you can say, or even to your own kiddos who are looking at schools, let's take a look at a cheaper school. That could change our budget dramatically. So that's what it's set out to do, is to help students really see the cost of education and how it affects them based upon their career. Here on our next slide, you want to compare those college costs versus the career outcome. So here, you know, how do you compare? Well, just as I had said earlier, you want to begin at Education Planner to start with the career and the school choice. You know, and you can find more information about financial aid and the financial aid process in the Paying for School section, as well as scholarships. Then bring them out and move them over to MySmartBorrowing.org. That way they can truly crunch those numbers and see, is this going to be the right school for them? Not just emotionally and physically, but more so financially. So as I finish up here, on the next slide, I do want to make you aware of the FEAA products and services that all are for free. No cost services for you whatsoever. Note that we do have a financial aid night toolkit, a FAFSA toolkit, and we do have career education and work standard toolkits, which include completed lesson plans. They are plug and play for all of those career education and work standards, grade 3, 5, 8, and 11 available. We have PDFs and flyers and ads for school publications and newspaper articles and planning. Again, put your name in here and just publish it kind of thing. And you can do that by visiting us out at FEAA.org. I will show you. If you see on the right-hand side of your screen, I have it circled under Partner Access. That's where you're going to find all this great information. Again, visit us out at FEAA.org. Moving right along to the next slide. I just reiterate that a little bit again for you there, that you know you will find those tools out there. But again, we at FEAA, we are access partners. I do want to let you know that we conduct financial aid nights across the state of Pennsylvania. We do that with high schools and other community agencies and legislatures. We have FAFSA completion sessions, so you may find us during the day. You might find us in the evening, sometimes on weekends, maybe at high schools, maybe at legislative events, maybe at community agencies, maybe even at post-secondary schools. We do as much as we can to help those that are in need. We also like to do those in-class and computer lab presentations. As I mentioned, I love going in and pretending I'm psychic and knowing who the tactile children are by working in Education Planner and also working with students in financial literacy with MySmartBorrowing. And if you are interested, there is an access partner in your region. So I will show you here in the next slide. Excuse me, and it'll be the next two slides. But in the next slide, some additional resources are available for you, our websites. You see will all be listed there, FEAA.org, EducationPlanner.org, MySmartBorrowing, YouCanDealWithIt.com, which has some other calculators for budgeting. We have a Facebook page. We have MyFedLoan.org, AESSuccess.org. On the next slide, you will also find us. There are some spaces. If you have never met with an access partner, we do go in and work with the high school counselors quite a bit. So if you haven't, if you're at the middle school, elementary school, and you haven't met with one of us before, you might want to drop us a line. You might want to contact your the high school counselor and see if they have a contact or any information for you. And with that being said, I will end the presentation on my end by giving you the regions in which are served. We're broken into two separate regions. Here on the next slide, you'll see the western part of Pennsylvania. You can see the region and the counties in which they serve and the contact folks that are out there. So out in the west, we have Tim, Marion, Amy, Dan, Julie, Wendy, and Jan. On the next slide, here in the eastern side of Pennsylvania, which is where I am located, down by Knoebels, if anybody knows where that is. Don't get excited, they're closed. You can see the region, the counties in which we serve, and your contacts. Folks here on the eastern side of Pennsylvania include Tiffany, Sonia, me, Marla, Linda, Ron, Michael, and Franny. And with that being said, I'd like to turn it back over to Hillary to see if there are any questions. If you do not have any questions right now, or if you think of something later, my email is provided in the bio. But again, I will let you know it is mkane, K-A-N-E, at PHEAA, PHEAA.org. I will be more than happy to help you, and if I can, if you're not within my region, I'll be more than happy to transfer you out to one of my awesome colleagues, which will be out there to help you. Hillary?
Great. Thank you so much, Marla. I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so you must have done such a great job of explaining everything that they got it all. But I appreciate that, and I'm actually contemplating, I think, my kid might be one of those tactile learners, and I might know that, but he might not know yet. So he's in 5th grade, but I'm thinking we might hop on there ourselves here at home. So
it would be a lot of fun.
Indeed. So thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us this evening and for sharing that incredibly useful information, both the websites and the changes in the FAFSA. So thanks so much, Marla. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.